It's autumn in our cut flower garden here in Cheshire. It's actually not too cold right now, but the fog's starting to form, and that gets me really thinking about the things that I need to do in my autumn garden. The list can sometimes be endless. I think it's actually busier than spring. So in this video, I'm going to share with you what I'm doing in our cut flower garden right now in mid-autumn, and the things that you could think about for your garden, because it's really the start of a new floral year. Sweet peas. I normally leave mine on to collect seed, but for lots of reasons this year, they just aren't maturing fast enough, and it's mid-October, mid-autumn, so I'm not going to get to them. So they're going to be stripped off here. This, I use string for netting. Lasts me I can maybe get 3 years out of it, but only if I take it in when the worst of the weather happens. So stripping these peas, taking in this string, and then heavily mulching the ground, because oh my gosh, sweet peas, they need a lot of feeding. Label your dahlias and also make a decision on your dahlias, because every year I get some and I think, ooh, too pink, and then I get others and I think, ooh, chocolate, I'll keep her. So very controversial subject. I use these labels with my Sharpie pen with a permanent marker. I attach it to the stem, and the really important thing, as the fog was drifting over mid-autumn here, I realised that unless I label them now, the frost will take them soon and I won't be able to identify them. So get out there now, start labelling before you can't recognise them. Look out for self-seeded plants. So this is Aquilegia. Underneath here is Leucojum, the summer snowdrops, and this gives me an early beautiful snowbell for my spring bouquets. But Aquilegia flowers a little bit later. It's called Granny's Bonnets, and I also love it. So this is self-seeded here over my Leucojum. So what I'm going to do is move all these free plants to another location in our cut flower garden, and then the Leucojum are free to flower. Mid-autumn, you're at the peak of your bulb planting. Well, I am anyway. So this is the 2 big bowls that I use for planting paper whites, and they've been forced, so I'm hopefully going to have them for Christmas. But I plant them on the front side of our wharf, so this is south facing, with the warmth of the stone behind me to just give them a little bit more shelter. You might be wondering what the bricks and the meshes are. Well, there's a pair of marauding squirrels at the minute, because we have a huge horse chestnut which is showering conkers, and they're having a field day, so I want to distract them with conkers rather than my lovely paper white bulbs. I'll share with you later on my favourite tool at this time of year in the garden, but it very much is still bulb planting. But when I look at my cut flower garden, I really look at seasonal succession, and I've planted this with a range of perennials. So Alchemillus edges it. It's got Aquilegia that gives beautiful early spring spikes, because this is in the south part of the garden. And then I'm going to plant some Iris Hollandica. King's Mauve is the variety that I've chosen, so that I can have a May moment. So the spikes will rise up out of this bed along with the Aquilegia, with the frothy mass of lime Alchemilla mollis in June. So this is Cynoglossum. It's been notorious for getting into people's hair and them having to literally cut it out, because these seeds are so sticky. You can see that it's stuck here. But I'm sprinkling it round because it has the most beautiful blue flower that I absolutely adore. So I'm trying to almost naturalise it a little bit. I might rue the day. But anyway, the point, in autumn, you can sprinkle seeds everywhere and forget about them, and then they will germinate for you in spring, and you haven't had to do anything. Not a favourite job, but the greenhouse glass needs a clean. It's one of those autumn jobs that you kind of think, but it really does need to be done because it decreases the amount of disease. The other thing I do, when I'm clearing in the garden, I find ladybirds, so I ship some of them into the greenhouse where they're quite happy for winter. A lot of autumn is about clearing and mulching and preparing for the next season to come, which for us here in the UK is winter, but for the growing season it's spring. So this had my helichrysum in, which has been an amazingly productive crop this year. And I'm going to plant my ranunculus and anemones in this bed, and I want to give it a good fertilise. So I'll put some really nice compost on here, and then I'll, cover it over. And then come January, I will put my already chitting corms in here, and they'll be pre-sprouted. What I will need to watch is our four-legged friends. So I'm going to try a few sprays with garlic this year to see if that does anything. Last autumn, we planted literally thousands of daffodils in these troughs, and you've seen that in a previous video that I've done on planting daffodils. But the idea was that these are like canals in our garden, because the canal is just over there. So the design aesthetic echoes where we actually are, right next to a 19th century canal. But what I ideally wanted was in the spring, after the daffodils are flowered and dying down, for there to be some wild flowers and grasses coming up. What I realised is that I needed to kind of kill the grass, but I didn't want to do it in a kind of environmentally friendly way. So I've got some yellow rattle seed. I will sprinkle it on these beds now. I'm taking out all of the creeping buttercup, and it needs a period of vernalisation, i.e. cold. So we're just about mid-autumn, we'll be going into winter, and then the yellow rattle will just colonise this patch, and then I'll sow some wildflower seeds with that too. A top tip for autumn is it's just the right time to really think about your cut flower garden, or this is our kitchen garden, our potager, because you are clearing, and while it can look a bit messy, it can also give you sight of what you've got. I've got about a quarter of the beds in here that I've turned over to perennials. So they're things that I have a succession of cutting flowers all the time that I really don't need to plant again, because they just come back year after year. So that's about a quarter of this space. You'll see that there's a few empty beds in here as well, and I want to let them rest, because you know how it is with gardens, they have quite an arc. We talk in terms of seasons. The next season, we're always planting for 3 to 6 months ahead. So I'm looking at this space now, and I'm looking at what I'm going to plant for next spring and summer, and there is going to be a mixture of herbs and vegetables in here, because there used to be, and I kind of took it over with flowers a bit, but mid-autumn is a perfect time to really start to think and plan about what you're going to plant in your spaces that you're clearing. What you use to do your work in the garden is incredibly important. It can make all the difference. So this is a DeWitt tool. I'm not sponsored or anything, but it's a snake's head. And I love using this because you can get some really good perches, get some really good weeds out, plant really optimum length for depth for planting bulbs. So you might like other tools, but my mid-autumn recommendation is that you really think about the things that help you in the garden at this time. You need to keep warm. I wear hats and really good boots because you're out in the wet, you need to keep dry. So look after yourself when you're out in the garden at this time of year, because you want to be well and keep going, because there's loads of jobs. So this is my bed of apple mint. A top tip is to always keep your bed of mint in one bed, otherwise it likes to really wander around. And the top tip for this, use a hedge cutter to cut down, otherwise you're hours snipping all the stems. So use a hedge cutter, and also when you're using your tools, tie a ribbon to the end, and that way you can always find it. So if you're finding some of these hints and tips quite helpful, I'd be absolutely delighted if you consider subscribing to our channel. The buttons somewhere in our videos, so, and hit the bell as well, so every time we produce a video, which we do take quite a lot of time to do these videos, you'd be notified straight away when you get one. This is tomato, Tumbling Tom Yellow. He's been bountiful all year, but a tip is at this time of year, just save a couple of tomatoes. It doesn't matter if they get a bit old over the winter, but you can then use them to just pop into a pot, and they will germinate, and you never need to buy the seeds again of your favourite tomato varieties. So this is the second year that we've had Tumbling Tom, and I absolutely love the yellow of Tumbling Tom. In fact, yellow is such a favourite colour that we've got some online dried wreath classes at the end of the month, and I think they're going to be yellow because autumn and your garden, it so influences you, doesn't it? So I love to look at that and think, oh, what colour am I going to use in that, and then just be influenced by that. So collect a tomato and save it for next year.